So I call on Mikhailo Shwec, who's the moderator for the next panel around community development. And this is a very important panel in terms of what is the future of what will Canada and the Ukrainian community look like. So please, Mikhailo.
Доброго дня вам. Слава Україні. So welcome to this next session, which is entitled Building Community Now and After the War. As you all know, the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress is focused in three main areas of work. One is building community. Two is caring for, developing our Canadian-Ukrainian identity, or for those of you from Montreal, l'identité québécoise-ukrainienne. And also, definitely, what we're seeing the most of is to work in support of Ukraine. So while everybody's lives has changed since especially February 24th, where much of the effort and focus is on support of Ukraine, we also try to keep a focus on the other two pillars. So today's session is about the pillar of building community. I'll ask my panelists to come up if you can, and I'm going to, we have an impressive array of panelists today who will share with you what they have done as community builders. So I'm going to invite to the stage we have from PEI, Elina Lialiuk. We have from the Alberta Provincial Council President, Orysia Boychuk. That's right. And we have the president, second-term president of SUSK. We have Danya Pankiw. And the president of the UCC Victoria branch, Devon Sereda-Goldie. So welcome to the panelists. As you're going to see here, we have all different levels. So we have from provincial council, branch president, we have new areas from Atlantic Canada, and also the students. I'm going to ask each of them to very quickly, maybe just for 2 minutes, just to introduce themselves and tell us how you got here. I'm not talking about the airline. We already covered that in a previous session. If you could just tell us how you got here, and then after that, we'll continue with your presentations. So maybe we'll start here with Elina.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a big honor for me to be present today. Thank you very much for everything you do to help Ukraine and Ukrainians. It's extremely important, even being like thousands of kilometers away, still to be able to support our motherland. My name is Elina Lialiuk, and I came from the Prince Edward Island province. I relocated, thank you, that's pretty far. I relocated to Canada 3 years ago. I came from the city of Lviv, and there I came with my husband and 5-year-old son at the time, and also like this year I gave birth to a daughter. So like trying to build a community and still look after my kids, that takes a lot of time, but I know what I am doing that for. So like in Ukraine, I used to work as a technical writer and as a translator. Then when we came to Prince Edward Island, I started volunteering with the PEI Newcomers Association and helped like newcomers from Ukraine to learn English. And but I always was concerned like why we like had some Ukrainian families on Prince Edward Island, but we didn't have any Ukrainian community. And like each of us like realized that that was important because we never associated ourselves with the Russian-speaking community or Russian community. And we were very, sometimes really angry when we heard that Like when you asked people what you know about Ukraine, they said like, oh, you speak Russian there, or you're a part of Russia. So that was terrible, and like I understood that we have to create our community to prove our distinctiveness and to demonstrate everybody that Ukraine, that's an independent country with its culture, with its traditions that have nothing to do with the Russian-speaking world at all. And after that, there was like a startup company who were doing some like an application for newcomers, and they had like different languages in their application available, but Ukrainian again was not among them. And that was another reason, like, and I realized we need the community and we need it now. And in summer of 2021, our community of PEI gathered for the first time together, where we demonstrated to the island that we do exist. And when the war started, we developed a really huge like Stand With Ukraine campaign, which became the main stream for support of Ukraine and Ukrainians coming to PEI, and we continue to conduct different events to promote Ukraine, to popularize it, and declare ourselves at the community, Ukrainian community of PEI.
Thank you. Jackie.
Дякую, Elina. It's hard to follow that. I'm Danya Pankiw. I am the president of the Ukrainian Canadian Students Union, or short form SUSK, which doesn't align in English with the letters. It corresponds somehow then into Ukrainian with Союз Українського студентства Канади. We are the student union that oversees all Ukrainian student organizations at post-secondary institutions across Canada. And to answer your question, Mikhaila, I am born and raised in Toronto and always grew up in the very strong Ukrainian community that we have there. I attended Ukrainian school every Saturday. I went to St. Demetrius Catholic School, which is a Ukrainian Catholic school in the Toronto Catholic School Board. And I was, and still am a plastunka. And so that is my involvement in the Ukrainian Canadian community, and how I got to SUSK was when I went to Queen's University for my undergraduate studies. A few of my friends kept poking me and saying, hey, you're part of the Queen's Club, but why don't you come to a SUSK Congress? Why don't you check out what it's all about? And I was humming and hawing, and finally I went to a Congress, really enjoyed it, ran for Internal Relations Director, and then ran for President, and I'm now in my second term. And it has opened up my eyes into extremely different perspective of our Ukrainian Canadian community here. It's provided me with endless leadership opportunities like this right here, and has really helped me grow as an individual. So I'm very grateful for that.
Дякую. Orysia, did you get poked all the way to provincial council? Is that
I
it?
did. I certainly got poked along the way. My name's Orysia Boychuk. I'm president of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress Alberta Provincial Council. My parents are both from Ukraine. They fled the war after the Second World War and landed in Ontario. I was born in Oshawa. I was very involved. Mama and тато мене висилали до рідної школи. Вчилися в вівторок і в п'ятницю вечір. My friends were all out playing, going skating, and я йшла до рідної школи і вчилася, як говорити українську мову. Я також танцювала активно. Я також була голова, president of Ukrainian Student Society at the University of Alberta. I spent almost a couple years working in Brazil with the Ukrainian Hromada in Brazil, and then made my way to Alberta and have not left. While in Alberta, I was the president of the UCC Edmonton for several years, also a number of other leadership roles, organizational leadership roles. And now I'm almost 3 years in to being the president of UCC Alberta, survived COVID, and now powering our way through this Ukraine crisis. Дякую.
Excellent. Thank you. And last but not least, Devon, who's a branch president in Victoria.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon now. My name is Devon Sereda-Goldie, and I came to this in a bit of an unusual trajectory. So I grew up in Edmonton in a family that was involved in Ukrainian culture in some ways and not in others. And as I learned later on in my life, my family was one of the families that had been interned during the First World War, and that had a really strong effect on our family and led a number of our family members to move away from Ukrainian culture in seeking to assimilate in Canada. And so my Guido was actually the very first person in our family to leave the farm and to go to university, and he became an engineer. And he was able to succeed because Sereda can easily be anglicized to Sereda and doesn't sound perhaps as Ukrainian as a name like Boychuk or another name that ends with a more obvious Ukrainian ending. And for a long time, our family really tried to assimilate, to be perceived as British. And it wasn't until my uncle came along, who is 12 years younger than my mother, that they sort of rediscovered their Ukrainian identity, because my uncle, Les Sereda, fell in love with Ukrainian dance. And many things happened. The family fell back in love with Ukrainian culture. My uncle has gone on to become the executive artistic director, I believe his title is, of Shwec. And my Guido ended up being in your role as the Alberta president of KUK before he passed. And I actually didn't know most of this growing up. You know how Ukrainians are. They think everybody knows everything about the family, and sometimes we forget to tell our upcoming generations about the incredible both hardship and successes that our family histories have seen. And so when I got to university, I moved to Victoria, British Columbia, and I realized I really started to miss Ukrainian culture because I didn't see very much of it happening at the university, which was where I was at, and started to seek out more information. And it was through that I discovered that my family had been interned. I learned about the Holodomor for the first time because, believe it or not, that wasn't something that I learned about as a young person. And I discovered the incredible history of my family and everything that they had been through. So I was really inspired, and it ended up inspiring my research. So I started a master's, which has now led to a PhD, and my whole research looks at intergenerational trauma in the Ukrainian community and how these legacies of trauma, from internment to Holodomor to the current war, really inform the way that we as Ukrainians identify. And my aspiration is to use the arts to create safe spaces, to have intergenerational conversation around these topics. But anyway, how did that lead me to community leadership? I fell deeply in love with the community, and the more I started doing research, the more I found myself falling in with people who were doing amazing and empowering work. And I was lovingly peer pressured by a group of delightful babas into slowly taking on more and more leadership. Until I found myself here. We have a smaller community on Vancouver Island, although it's grown exponentially since the war began. But when I started to get involved, it was a very small community, many organizations, but few people, with people wearing multiple hats, and I was constantly being told we need young blood. So I became the sacrifice. And here I am. And since the war has started, we have been running 24/7, and we realized that with such a small community, it was absolutely essential that all of our organizations banded together, because there was no way that we could create the level of support that was needed if we were to work individually. So we all came together and started working together and created something called Help Ukraine Vancouver Island, which has since sort of become its own much larger project than we could ever have anticipated. But that's the experience that I'm coming from. We've settled about 600 Ukrainians now on Vancouver Island, and have been working with about 500 volunteers. And many of them have come from outside the community, which has been really empowering and really wonderful to see. So that's how I come to this work.
Okay, thank you. So as you see, we have different levels of responsibility in terms of organizational life. And what we're going to do now is, the way this is going to work, we're going to ask each one to share with us their experience, some of the things that went well, some of the key lessons that they learned about the work that they've done, especially in this past year, how some of that work has changed, and maybe even they can share with us some of the lessons, how they would have done things differently. Hindsight, we all know hindsight is 20/20, so we're going to ask each one of them to share for a few minutes on their work, and then what we're going to do is we're going to open up to the floor to ask any questions that you may have. What you will see here, you're going to see yourselves. I mean, you're all the delegates, right? So you're going to see yourselves in all of these examples, but there may be some take-home key nuggets that you have that can help other people in your groups, in your communities. So without further ado, maybe Elina, I'll ask you to come up if you want. And share.
So most probably I will we will start with what was like successful this year and the things we are proud of. So first of all, we organized a Stand with Ukraine campaign in PI before and when the war started, and which through engaging Orysia PI, provincial government and local volunteers became the main PI support stream of Ukraine and Ukrainians coming to our province under the XXVII program. Also, our PI Ukrainian community regularly organizes and participates in different fundraisings in support of the humanitarian needs of Ukrainians, and which we managed to raise thousands of dollars, and including participation in the symphony, PI Symphony Orchestra concert, where we delivered a powerful speech and performed our national anthem. That concert was a really big success and a great chance to declare ourselves as a community. One more event was the Diversity Festival, which is like a PEI annual tradition to celebrate diversity and Canadian multiculturalism. Previously, Ukrainians never participated in that event, but this year we performed dance and also we performed Ой, у лузі червона калина. It was a great experience for us in terms of building our community and integrating newcomers because we had numerous rehearsals during some time, for more than 1 month, when we gathered together for the shared purpose, both adults and kids. My sister, who came last April, actually staged the dance to the Ukrainian potpourri songs, and she started the dancing studio in PEI, and again this event was a really big success for our community. Another event was marking the 31st anniversary of Ukrainian independence, where we invited and expressed our gratitude to the municipal and provincial authorities, as well as the people who helped us from the Newcomers Association of PI and local volunteers. We delivered again speeches, we raised our flag, we performed the national anthem, and after that we had a big picnic where people brought some homemade dishes. That was a great again, chance for us to socialize, to get acquainted, to talk what our community is doing. And what was interesting that also people from the, as we call them, senior Ukrainian diaspora attended the event as well, and they shared with us how actually when they came, it was in 1940s, and how they gathered together to somehow keep Ukrainian traditions and culture. But the thing was that their gatherings didn't have any social status. Nobody knew about it. But also they had a chance to explain to people why having a community is very important, because not all the people realize why when people move to other countries they still try to organize communities. Like, to sum up, I want to say that we have established really good relationship with PI province, and it is definitely our achievement. Our Ukrainian community in PI receives strong support from municipal and provincial authorities regarding our initiatives, and we are extremely grateful for that. And our community declared itself pretty well, and we managed to prove our distinctiveness, and that's important for us because we are not associated with the Russian-speaking communities anymore. And in addition, like 2 months ago, we drafted our constitution and submitted it for the review to UCC. Like, the thing is that we would like to acquire the official statutes and share the same mission that UCC does. That will help us to kind of win more credibility from people who are coming to our province, and that will just show them that we are not just a couple of people who decided to do something, but we are doing that for the sake of our community, for identifying and expressing the interests of Ukrainians, trying to enhance and develop our community. So it's important so people, newcoming Ukrainians, understood that there is certain mission. We are not doing that for fun. There is purpose for which we are doing that. And also among the lessons which we learned starting from February 24th, that sometimes you have to be really selective about who is going to join your community. It is important that only those with the same passion, purpose, vision, and values join the communities, because otherwise communities tend to fall apart if neglected. They need nourishment and dedication from their members through traditions, behaviors, and knowledge sharing. Not only origin and distinctiveness unite people, but also collaborating towards common purpose. And the magic of community is in the shared act, and community members find each other, work together, and achieve success together. One more lesson is that by developing our Ukrainian community in PI, it is important for us to care about our reputation, among other PI communities. We always synchronize our actions with the province of PI, get needing permissions for holding events, respect people we collaborate with, announce information about the events beforehand so that everybody who wants to join could do that and not feel excluded. And our PI Ukrainian community won respect of the municipal and provincial authorities. At the same time, we do require other PI communities to respect us and act on our behalf only after getting our consent. Also, it's important, if you want to be heard, you have to talk, you have to be active, you should never give up. When the war started, even though it was really complicated morally, it was of vital importance to raise the issue to the public's attention. When we started doing that, we started receiving the support we have now. One more thing we noticed is that a purpose with a sense of urgency unites people faster. Also, it is important always to explain and emphasize the importance of the events we hold. Express gratitude to everybody who participated, who supported the events. And also, it is important to popularize and promote your community, because a few months ago, we had an unpleasant situation which happened that now we have a lot of Russians in our community who kind of changed their shoes and started helping Ukraine. There is nothing bad about that, but the bad thing is that they started doing it without notifying us about their action. They started acting on our behalf, but they never informed us. So and sometimes newcomers, newcomers from Ukraine, they do not have enough information who is who, and they see the friends in those people who give them like some assistance. And if there is, but actually they do not understand that like in order to make it possible for them to come to our province and get the support they have, like our community did a lot. So we realized that it's important to promote, to notify people like about what we are doing, even like posting it on Facebook regularly. And like one more thing which I realized for myself, that like it happened so that I became a leader because I was the person who organized the PI Ukrainian community, that being a leader is not an easy thing because you all looks like you never do enough, or sometimes people think that you do nothing at all. But it doesn't mean that you have to like give up. You cannot please everybody. It's important just to do what you need to do to proceed doing that, and like the people who want to be with you, they will join you and will be with you on that way. And like what is like our vision for community after the war? We want to proceed building our Ukrainian community through these like soul-feeding events, personal connections, respect, and pursuing the same goals. Being connected creates the feeling of togetherness, of belonging to the Ukrainian roots. It helps us to keep our traditions and culture and promote them in our new home country. And at the same time, we are always open to external connectivity and collaboration. And the PI Ukrainian community is striving to create like the PI UCC branch to become an official like representation of UCC, because as a community we want to acquire official status and more credibility. We want to help serve the same mission, identify and address the needs of the Ukrainian community in Canada and ensure its continued existence and development. And also we want to support our fellow citizens in Ukraine who are fighting for the values of democracy, freedom, human rights, own land, and life. And also besides, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, our province started like a pilot project which is called Gender Equity Development, Inclusion and Community Enhancement Program, which allows like all the communities of PEI to get some funding for their communities development and promoting the communities. So we have applied for the program as well. So we are planning like next year to hold like project called like Ukrainian Days in PEI, and we are planning like celebrate the St. Nicholas Day, Christmas Eve, Easter, anniversary of Ukraine's independence, and to hold some like workshops like Petrikivka painting workshop and Ukrainian cross stitch and beads embroidery workshop, Vyshavanka Day, and also like the Holodomor, marking the anniversary of Holodomor and Genocide Memorial Day. We are planning like to conduct information sessions in high schools, colleges, and university of PEI, and also to invite people to commemorate everybody who became the victim of this horrible genocide. So we are waiting for the decision of the program, so hopefully we will manage to get some funding. If not, we will try to do it by our own efforts. So that's the plan. We are going to unite people to develop, to build our community of PEI, and hopefully that will bring some really good results in future. Thank you.
So that is one of our newest up-and-coming branches. I think she said it all. I don't know how many people are active with you, but gratuluju to be, because that is a colossal amount of work that has been done. And for sure some of you have seen the things that you're doing, but what's extremely impressive is when you see an area of the country that pretty much has gone from, has pretty much gone from no representation to this. I think it's a testament of what the Ukrainian Congress can do in terms of support, but I think it's a testament of the type of the caliber of people that are coming and taking on the leadership. So it's our pleasure to have you with us, congratulations on all the work that's been done so far. It's one thing dealing with people in the community. It's another thing dealing with students. I have 4 of them in my house, and it's tough. So we're going to ask Danya to come up here to explain to us how you can corral students, especially when you're running a pan-Canadian organization of them, and to please share with us what you've been doing for the past year.
Дякую, and I hope I'm not one of the difficult students that you have to deal with. Oh, I'm going to adjust this. So dякую for having me. I'm very honored to be here and to have the opportunity to speak at this panel. And I really wanted to take this opportunity to refresh or tell everyone who doesn't know what SUSK is, a little bit about the organization and how we've changed and evolved since February 24th and where we're going to continue to support Ukrainian students from here and into the future. So in a short 3 sentences, SUSK, the Ukrainian Canadian Students Union, we oversee all Ukrainian Canadian students. And when students graduate from high school and make the decision to attend a post-secondary institution here in Canada, they have the decision of whether they want to continue being involved in the Ukrainian Canadian community and growing those leadership skills. And SUSK is there to provide that opportunity. And so whether you were involved in a youth group, Tansi, or no group at all, you have the opportunity to join your Ukrainian student club on campus, meet fellow Ukrainians or other students that are passionate about Ukrainian culture and language, and work together and grow this club at your campus. And so this is really what SUSK fosters and provides. And so after February 24th and on February 24th, our focus really became 3 areas of students. And so we have Ukrainian Canadian students like myself who are born in Canada, have a Canadian citizenship. Our second group is we have Ukrainian students who were here prior to February 24th on a student visa as international students. And the third group of students became Ukrainian students who are fleeing from Ukraine and trying to seek refuge and continue pursuing their post-secondary institution studies at a Canadian institution. And SUSK became the governing body that advocated for these 3 groups. And so there was really 3 kind of differences and needs that they needed. And so Ukrainian Canadian students, they're affected by this war. They may have families in Ukraine. They have ties to the country. And so we really began by contacting universities and colleges and saying that they may need some extensions on academic assignments. There may be a need for mental health counseling and well-being and so on. And that was a good ask, and schools really did respond well to that, and that's something that we were able to integrate. The Ukrainian students who were here prior to the war on a student visa, they needed support in financial fees. Many of them were not able to return back to Ukraine for the summer period of May to August, and so they needed to find somewhere to live for those 4 months. And the third group of students, those who are coming from Ukraine and looking to continue their studies, they really needed support on can they continue their studies here in Canada. So imagine you're a third-year engineering student, you've put in the time and the money, 3 years of university studies, and you want to come to Canada and you want to continue your studies. You don't want to go back into first year. You want to be able to somehow use what you've put the work into in Ukraine here in Canada. And so we approached government officials, we approached university counselors and academic deans and all of those to say, does first year calculus in Ukraine at a university, let's say in Lviv, does that equate to first year calculus at the University of Toronto, let's say? And is there a way that we can work around to find a compromise that some of these credits that they've earned can be transferred to the institutions here in Canada, and so that doesn't all just disappear, all of that hard time, money, and energy. And so this is really what we've been focusing on and what we're still working on. There have been various different responses that we've received. So for those of us who don't know, post-secondary institutions are governed provincially in Canada and not federally. So there isn't one individual that you can approach and say, let's sit down and advocate for this with this individual. We've got 10 provinces and 3 territories, so we've got 13 different ministers, and every place has a different way of going about it. And so we really identified this gap in our community where we don't have a precedent. There isn't a policy that exists that says if there are students that are experiencing fleeing a war-torn country, or they come from somewhere where there's political unrest, there isn't a policy that kicks in and says, this is how we transfer their credits, this is how we provide them with academic support, and this is where we go from there. And so our job at SUSK became finding those ministers, meeting with them, and saying, can you provide these supports? And a big thing when I would sit down with these individuals, I would say to them, I am Ukrainian, and I am advocating for Ukrainians and Ukrainian students, but Ukraine is not the first country that's experiencing this event and something along these lines, and it's not the last. And there are many other students from many other cultural backgrounds and countries that also need this support, and there is nothing for those students or for Ukrainci. And so the big thing is, how do we get our country to provide a unified support? And we're still working on that, and that still is a big gap in our community that we've identified. And so, for example, if you go to our website, we have everything listed, but there's constant supports that are being released for students. For example, at Queen's University, there's the Mayor's Fund. So Professor Lialiuk, he started the Mayor's Fund and fundraised money for students, and that was a form of a scholarship for them. We also have, for example, Dalhousie University, they're waiving application fees. So students who are coming from Ukraine and are applying to the school, even prior to being accepted into a program, they don't need to pay an application fee. There is also other programs that exist. The University of Alberta has been excellent in providing support. They have waived all tuition fees for Ukrainian international students. So those who were here prior to the war and those who are looking to continue studying here. So we do have this really unbalanced response across our country for these students. And so it's become challenging. And those who are coming from Ukraine are looking, maybe it's better for them to go to Alberta and not to go to another school that doesn't have this support. And something else that we've identified is that when we approach these government officials is that our community, the Ukrainian Canadian community, is really behind and is the backbone in implementing this. The Temerte Family Foundation and Ignatovic Family Foundation have started some excellent programs for students at University of Toronto and Western University, but this isn't coming from the works of politicians. This is coming from the works of our community and our Ramada here. And so this is something that SUSK has been focusing on since February 24th and is continuing to focus on. In terms of international students who are coming from Ukraine, they are coming here to finish their education. But as we heard from speakers prior, Pavlograd was talking about this morning, they're coming from Ukraine to study, or Ukrainians are coming to Canada, but they want to go back to Ukraine. And we want to rebuild Ukraine, and Ukraine is already being rebuilt in this moment. And these students are coming to Canada to be able to finish their education and gain those skills to go back and take those skills that they learn here in Canada and go back to rebuilding Ukraine. And so we're looking to provide that opportunity. And one way that we're doing that is SUSK has started working with a fast-growing startup, and this startup works to pair international students who are looking to continue their studies in Canada. And they work one-on-one with students. They're called coaches, and they are aware of all of the programs across the country in each province and territory. They're aware of what the admission deadlines are. Can a student start school in December or January rather than the traditional start date of September? And we are hoping to build this program to engage students and welcome them as they come to Canada, to set up and work with a coach and say, okay, this person will sit down with you and say, you were studying this in Ukraine, you want to learn in this province, or you're open to any province, let's put together a list. What is the application process like? Do you need reference letters? And so on, and the admissions. And so this is something that SUSK is working on currently to try to mitigate this challenge that and gap in our community of providing education for international students and for them to continue to study here. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Дякую, Danya. I think when you hear the level of activity, you take the national committee or the national board of SUSK, and to see the level at which they're working today, it's very impressive. To understand the difference, the provincial differences, the funding in three main groups, Danya, I think you and your team need to be applauded. So дякую for your work. I think we're going to go out to Victoria now, and maybe we'll ask Devon to come and share how work has evolved in Victoria.
Hello, everyone. I'm very grateful to be here and have a chance to speak with you and share what we've been doing all the way out on Vancouver Island. So, of the events that we've done this year and of the many programs and projects that we've initiated, a few of the ones that have been, to my mind, the most impactful and the ones that we're most proud of are the ones I'm going to speak about today. So, one of those stemmed from our weekly meetings with the province of British Columbia. And a huge thank you to the BC Provincial Council for allowing those weekly meetings, for setting up those weekly meetings and giving us space as a local branch to participate and to ensure that the needs of our local community were being heard. And one of the things that came out of that was a monthly, what we called government pop-up program. So we realized very quickly that when people are arriving from Ukraine, they have a huge array of needs that they need met very, very quickly. And at the time, the only way to do that was for the host, we have a hosting program, a matching program, was for the host to take people to all of the different organizations they had to go to. The wait times were extensive, and it was not a fast process. It was taking multiple days, sometimes up to a week. So we connected with the government and we created these government pop-ups. So at the local Ukrainian Cultural Center, all of the different government agencies that were serving new Ukrainians would come together on one day in one space to create basically a single-stop shopping experience for all of your needs as a new Ukrainian arriving in Canada. So they could get their MSP, their medical services plan, they could get their SIN number, they could talk about getting financial support from the province, from the government, they could meet with the different service agencies that we have in Victoria and learn about how do I seek out ESL, how do I seek out different financial supports. And that has been something that has been incredibly, incredibly well received by both the community and was so successful that it ended up being implemented in other parts of the province and also being implemented by other ethnic communities outside of our own. So it was something that's been picked up by the Syrians and a number of other ethnic communities, and the province has taken what we created together and turned it into a program of their own that they're now able to implement in different places across the province and with different ethnic communities, which is really exciting. Another piece that I'm particularly proud of is our weekly meet and greets. So we realized very, very quickly that there was an enormous influx of new Ukrainians, but we had been setting them up with a support volunteer, so someone who was specifically designated to check in with them, and of course their host as well. But even with that, it's very isolating, and coming to a new country is incredibly intimidating. So we started a monthly meet and greet series, and we thought that this would just be a summer program, and it's grown into so much more. So every Wednesday evening, we would have an open drop-in meet and greet. And it started truly as just a social initiative for people to come and meet other Ukrainci and just have a space where they felt like they didn't have to constantly be on and weren't constantly having to do translation in their mind, weren't constantly having to feel like they had to put their best foot forward in this new country, but a space where they could just breathe and be around other Ukrainians. And that was really powerful and important. But it grew into so much more. It grew into a space where we were able to bring in other service providers to help provide supports. So one of the biggest ones has been providing food support. We've connected with everything from local farmers to different agencies that provide and assist with food security. And it actually started with a couple of local Ukrainian Canadians who had gardens. And these babas were saying, I grew too much of this and too much of that. Do you think any of the new Ukrainians would like any of it? So what it's turned into is this really beautiful free food opportunity where people can come and take whatever they need. And most of it is grown fresh by local Ukrainians, local farmers. And now we've also started to receive donations from companies. Bread products, canned foods, a whole variety of things. And it's all gone within the first 10, 15 minutes. So it's a really wonderful way for us to share these resources with the community. We've also partnered with one of our local settlement agencies who created a volunteer mental health support program. So essentially they brought in a large group of volunteers who wanted to assist with mental health support, trained them in best practices for assisting with mental health support, identifying when someone perhaps needs more help than they can provide, and essentially creating a team that they could send out to different events to provide that support. So those individuals would come to that event and provide everything from, art therapy activities to kids stations to all sorts of different events happening in the corners of the room, and just people that people could talk to. And it's also been a really wonderful opportunity for our Ukrainian Canadians and our newly arrived Ukrainians, and also the sponsors and the hosts, many of which are not from the Ukrainian community, to come together in a space and share resources, share what's worked, share what hasn't. And the most important tool, I would argue, has been our newly arrived Ukrainians, because those who have come and have started to settle in are the ones who can turn around to the new folks who are arriving and say, okay, this worked, absolutely don't do this. And that has been incredibly helpful for those who have been arriving. One of our other initiatives that's been really wonderful is our markets. So this is something that started very organically with just a number of members of our community. They wanted to create a market space where they could sell and raise money for Ukraine to send back to purchase a wide variety of things that were needed on the front. And that grew immensely. It turned into a really wonderful weekly market program for quite some time. Now it's dropped back to about once a month. But these markets were hugely successful, saw a really, really great response from the local community, and were an opportunity for our community to raise funds to send back to Ukraine. And I think one of the things we've really realized is that coming from a smaller community, it's not possible to do everything ourselves. But what we do have the power to do is empower those who have ideas and have initiative and support them. So the way that we've been able to do so much of what we've done is we've had people come to us and say, I have this idea, I want to start markets. Or I have this idea, I think that I can assist people in providing assistance with building their resumes. And we say, that's amazing, thank you so much. How can we help you? How can we promote what you're doing? How can we support you? So we created something called Help Ukraine Vancouver Island, which started out with just us, the local Ukrainian Cultural Center, and the 2 local Ukrainian parishes, and has now grown to 15 different organizations across Vancouver Island. And it's essentially a project and a website where we're able to share all of the different resources that are available to people, because we, as the very small branch of Cook Victoria, we don't have the energy, we don't have the resources to do everything. But there are capable, intelligent, passionate people who have the skills, who have the time, who have the energy, and they want to give back. So we've really realized that it's not about us as Cook Victoria stepping up and saying, we know what's best, we will do everything, but it's been about empowering people and bringing people together under an umbrella. And I think the one project that I really want to highlight that we're the most proud of is our Ukrainian Village initiative. So we were approached by a local affordable seniors care facility, and they told us that they had an empty building that they had to vacate during the pandemic because there was no way to make individuals living in that building truly self-isolated, because it was a shared kitchen facility and shared living room facility where people would have independent units but would come together to share food. So there was just no way to safely utilize that space. So it had been emptied and had been sitting empty for almost 2 years. And so when the war began, they approached us and said, look, we've got this space and the restrictions have lifted. We're in no rush to use this space, and we would like to offer this space to you for as low as we possibly can, essentially at cost. And that was an incredible gift. But we realized very quickly that, again, this was not something we could do on our own and that we needed support. So we partnered with a local parish, local St. Nicholas Ukrainian Catholic Church, because they were a charitable organization. And KUK, our branch at the time, is not a registered charitable organization, so couldn't receive funding. And we partnered with them, the Kiwanis Village Society in Victoria, and we signed a lease. And so it's a 15-room building, and it's been open since August, and we have about 45 new Ukrainians who are living there together. And it's become an absolutely beautiful, embodied Ukrainian community, a real Ukrainian village. Currently, we provide people housing for 3 months with the possibility to extend. And the idea is that it's meant to be a temporary stopgap, a support system. So if people have already arrived, but they haven't yet been able to find their own accommodation after being hosted, or if people freshly arrive and we are short of hosts, which is becoming more and more of a problem, it gives us a space to put them up, to ensure that they're supported, to ensure that we have staff who can help them, make sure that they get everything that they need, make sure that they're able to start looking for employment, that they're able to start looking for their own accommodation in the future, and that they're surrounded by people who speak the same language, that they're not immediately arriving in Canada and seeking to live independently, because that can be really intimidating. And that's been hugely successful. We wouldn't have been financially able to do so on our own, but we were able to receive over $100,000 in financial support from various foundations and local agencies, and the municipal government, and a number of other wonderful donors. And it's been an absolutely phenomenal, wonderful, heart-filled project. We just had a Thanksgiving dinner where we had a whole bunch of members of the community come in, and we had a first Canadian Thanksgiving for these folks. And I think that kind of space is so beautiful. And I should specifically mention this housing facility is specifically for single mothers with children, single women, people with disabilities, people who identify as LGBTQ, anybody who is has a higher level of vulnerability and needs extra support. And so at this time, it's almost been exclusively single mothers with women. And it's been a really wonderful experience. I think that's all I'll share for now, but I thank you for your time and for listening, and I look forward to sharing more.
So lots of stuff. I think it's when we're working in our own communities, we have all projects that we're working on. We are busy. It's very inspiring to hear that this is happening all over the country. So we have from the students, minding student activities and ensuring education, that it's affordable and it's accessible to all, to brand new fledgling UCC branches, to a smaller branch, but doing big work. And I think I'm going to invite now Orysia to the microphone, who's the president of the Alberta Provincial Council, to help us see from that lens what it looks like.
Дуже дякую. Велика честь мені бути тут, мати нагоду представляти Конгрес українців Канади, Провінційна рада Альберти. і поговорити з вами про декілька проєктів, які ми займалися останні 9 місяців. This year, we embarked on January 2022, thinking that we were going to be fully focused on celebrating 130 years of settlement to Alberta. That was our big milestone accomplishment, and we really were, as a team, focused on making this celebration happen in August. Well, February 24th came, and the invasion really rocked our world, rocked everybody, every Ukrainian and non-Ukrainian, and life significantly changed. Today, Alberta has welcomed approximately 14,000 Ukrainian newcomers. 42% of the newcomers are in Calgary, 32% are in Edmonton. And we had to shift almost all our resources and entire focus on the newcomers arriving to the war. And thankfully, we were able to salvage a little piece of our executive to stay focused on the 130, and we did successfully have a celebration in August. So I'm very proud of the team that made this happen. And we do have a display in one of the rooms just outside this hall that you can go and visit and learn a little bit more about the first settlers that arrived to Canada in Alberta 130 years ago. So on day one, we became the command center. We went from 1 phone line to 4 phone lines, 1 person in the office to anywhere from 5 to 10 people in the office answering calls. We thankfully had a number of volunteers step up and really worked around the clock responding. We had every question possible come to our office. I'm sure that other provincial branches and national had the same thing, but it was all roads led to our office, and it was nonstop phones. In the first week, we engaged in this call to action. Everybody wanted to do something. They wanted to help, and it was just this urgency to help. And we did a call to action to fill a plane for Ukraine. It was filling it up with emergency equipment. We partnered with Firefighter Aid to Ukraine, and literally within 2 weeks of that concept being born to the flight leaving Edmonton to Poland with emergency equipment, that task was completed. Mind you, nobody slept for 2 weeks, 24 hours a day. It was an incredibly daunting task. I never in my wildest dreams thought that I'd be involved in moving a plane overseas. I don't know if anybody has ever tried to move a plane overseas, but it's probably one of the most challenging tasks that I know I've ever endured. I told my family I'd never be moving another plane, and sure enough, within that first week that plane left, I got a call from the former Premier, Ed Stelmach and Thomas Lukazik, saying, we have another plane we need to move. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not moving another plane. I'm like, that's the last thing. And my family's saying, you said you're not moving another plane. I'm like, but there's another plane coming. So sure enough, here we go with plane number 2. This is our first month, and the non-sleep continues. And here we go with another plane. We're filling it. We partnered with the Polish community, and LOT Airlines donated a flight, the plane, and Shell donated the gas. So actively, the community came together, filled the plane. Our first plane took 8 hours to fill. 8 hours. Within 8 hours, we had to stop all the donations coming in. The second plane was pretty close to that, filled it up, and our task with UCC APC was to actually manage the passengers. So they wanted the plane to arrive from Poland to Edmonton full of passengers, and UCC APC was tasked with working with the government to make sure that there were people who actually had visas to get on the plane and come legally to Edmonton. So we worked with, partnered with the Polish community, partnered with lots of community members. It really has been a team effort to move those planes. So after the second plane, I said, for sure, I'm done with planes. We're not moving any more planes. We shifted all our efforts to settlement because of the needs that were changing. So they continued on. We continued in Edmonton and in Alberta to fill and send emergency equipment, but our role at UCC APC had changed. Within the first month, we also established a website, uccab.ca. I encourage you to have a look at our website. We right away began building content on that website that was relevant for settlement, for newcomers settling in Alberta. And we wanted it to be a trusted source. So we quickly did, and we continue to work on this website on a daily basis, making sure it's relevant and has all the information it needs. We've engaged with Catholic Social Services, the Edmonton Mennonite Society, the Action for Healthy Living, and government officials on a regular basis. We meet weekly with government officials and stakeholders in our community to address and to learn and address issues and make sure that the gaps that are currently are being experienced by the newcomers in Alberta are being addressed and being moved forward. We've done a very strong advocacy with our municipal, provincial, federal governments. We've met over the last 8 months regularly with all levels. One of our greatest accomplishments has been a recent one that we met with the Minister of Immigration, Madhu, and we had advocated for the Alberta Advantage Immigration Program to incorporate Suet, our newcomers, to be able to qualify for this program, and we successfully succeeded on that. We've also advocated for the Ukrainian crisis, and the government of Alberta has donated $23 million to this crisis. So, there's been a lot of work, a lot of communication, and we're very proud of the support we received. Given the latest, we have a new premier now, and as you may all be aware of, she has been misinformed and made some statements that we still need to address with her. And we have put in several letters to request to meet with her. We're hoping to hear from her soon. We hope we don't have to go to the media and use that avenue to get to meet with her and talk to her about how we can work on this disinformation and how we can maybe use this opportunity to engage media to actually help inform and present facts. So we've also spent a lot of time in the last 8 months in the media, and I want to thank UCC National for all their support with their briefing. I know that at any point in time, I could call UCC National. Thank you, Orysia. Thank you, Ihor, for your relentless support and always giving advice to me, to UCC APC, and giving us the advice that we needed to actually present ourselves in a very professional manner. We've also engaged in the last 8 months with a lot of new organizations that have emerged because of this crisis. We have delegates here from Lethbridge that I'm very proud of and the work that they're doing. We have from Fort McMurray a representative who is here and has been engaged with newcomers and work there. We worked with Vegreville, Bonnyville, Red Deer. So many new communities have emerged, and there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, and we've helped support them with TELUS, gift cards, laptops, clothing from Joe Fresh, all kinds of support, and we hope to continue to keep working with those communities, keep building that relationship, and moving forward. We've been engaged also in doing welcome events for our newcomers, providing them a space for them to meet each other and also to learn about bringing in different agencies to talk about what resources are available, what supports are there for them. So what we've established, we've kind of got through the crisis point, and now we've identified some key pillars, like 5 key pillars that we need to be working with these newcomers on, and that's still that emergency housing. We're looking at English classes. We're helping support English classes, some intensive classes, and some regularly weekly classes just to help with the gap that currently exists before they get into the LINK program, the more long-term official programming. We are also coordinating employment opportunities for them, job fairs in Calgary and Edmonton, very large job fairs. Calgary, just the Welcome Evacuee Committee just hosted a job fair. 700 people showed up. Over almost 30 different employers showed up. We're having one in Edmonton November 4th, and we've partnered with the Edmonton Mennonite Center, with Redden Institute. So we've got lots of partnerships happening. We can't do this on our own. The work is extraordinary, and it's beyond the Ukrainian community, and we're so proud of all the partnerships we've engaged and leveraged. We've also established a furniture warehouse for our newcomers in Edmonton. There's one in Calgary, and we're feverishly working to help them set up with their basic furnishings of homes. In Edmonton, we're setting up about 35 to 40 families a week. So it's a lot of furniture, a lot of families we're supporting. We're also helping support with mental health. On our website, uccab.ca, there's a section on psychological supports. We've struck up a committee. The committee there has established some psychological services that are available. Have a look. You can refer people to these services, anywhere in Alberta. And we put in a grant to hopefully receive a little bit of additional funds to help us out with the mental health aspect. We have how else has UCC-APC helped out? Well, we've done humanitarian aid to Ukraine as well. We have an MOU with Ivano-Frankivsk, and we have met with the head of the state of Ivano-Frankivsk, Svitlana Lialiuk, and we've been meeting with her on a regular basis in the past couple of years, and we've donated in the last month $10,000 to purchase laboratory equipment for a military hospital in Ivano-Frankivsk. In the last week, we held a fundraising event with Maria Burmaka, and the fundraiser was for the COLA, and we raised $2,000 that she was able to take home and help support with this fund COLA and purchase additional needs for the Army. We've sent 12 iPads to Ukraine to support the Army as well. In terms of finances, UCC-APC has just dispersed $150,000 to Ukrainian organizations that are supporting settlement in Alberta. We also sent out $50,000 to help support summer camp fees, organizational membership fees, Ukrainian classes, and so on. We've also supported $35,000 in gift cards for newcomers, and we continue to provide emergency help supports for newcomers.
Дуже дякую. I think what we've shared here today is live action in 3 main areas that is giving success to all Ukrainians. And number 1 is we've heard the tremendous effort that is being deployed today to help Ukraine, help our communities deal with the new arrivals and how to grow our community. And there's no lack of effort that's being put through. I think that the examples that we heard here today also are a testament to the relationships that our community have within our community, between each other. But more importantly, what we're seeing is true examples of relationships that our community has developed with other organizations, be it provincial bodies, municipal bodies, other cultural communities. And those relationships today are proving to be tremendously supportive to what we need to do. And the third thing that is most impressive is the attitude. So positive attitude, we need to get to work, we need to do something. And I think that is a truth that we're seeing not only with the examples today here, but throughout all the work that you do. I still have a couple of questions for our panelists, but if any of you have any questions, I'd invite you at this time to come to the microphone. And I think we see Kasyan.
Yes.
Okay, Kasyan, you
Yes.
can ask.
Дякую. Kasyan Saltakevich, Kukutava. So I kind of want to flip, the question is going to be based on the title. Instead of building community now and after the war, my question is going to be focused on building community capacity, both now and after the war. So I think a really key part of what we have to think about as a community and as a whole, and it's something that many of our groups have, we were talking about in the leadership session, is the need to professionalize. And professionalize, I mean staffing and staff supports and putting the financial resources we need to make these things happen. We talked extensively, well not extensively, we talked a little bit about burnout, also in the leadership session, that this is a huge problem for our community. Also, sorry, if you're in this room and you're still talking, there's room outside to speak if you would like. Like, seriously, if you're in this room, you should be listening, and if you want to talk, there's some doors. There's a difficulty for us also. We talked about recruiting volunteers. Now it might be very easy, but we know what it was like a year ago, and we know what it will be like a year from now. There's a reason why we have this Congress, how this room looks, and the fact that we have had 4 cabinet ministers and the Prime Minister show up to this Congress. There's a reason why that has happened, and that's because of volunteerism, but also because of professional capacity building. The real cost of this Congress to every single one of you is over $1,300. None of you paid $1,300. It's because of the great sponsors we have to make this Congress possible. And that's another thing that we have to think about that's allowing us to build our capacity in our community. We have to recognize that we're able to have such a professional event, have high-level speakers, have announcements happen. That's because of all the hard work that you're doing, but also that we're doing as a community. But we can double that efforts if we kind of focus and put that energy behind that. And this energy allows us, obviously we're able to sit in this room and discuss, but also why we're able to help Ukraine so much more effectively. We can raise $1,000 and give $1,000 to a military unit in Ukraine, or we can use $1,000 as leverage to raise $50,000 or $100,000 from non-Ukrainians to help Ukraine, and that is so much more effective. So as a true Ukrainian, I promise I'm getting to my question. I want everyone here in this room, before I ask my question, I want everyone to think about this number. $5,000 allows you to hire someone at a part-time rate, 5 hours a week for a full year. Think about what you could do if you could assign someone 5 full hours a week to write grants, to write sponsorship requests, to write letters to ministers or your MPs or your provincial ministers, whatever that is. Think about that amount. And I really want to ask Danya and Orysia, you have 2 organizations, and I know especially SUSK and UCC-APC has grown in terms of capacity, in terms of staffing during this war. I want you to describe a little bit, ideally, would be how has this helped you and how has your organization changed and what has that allowed you to do and focus on because of that capacity? And then the question to Devon would be, if someone gave you $25,000 to hire someone, and unfortunately it won't be me, but I hope someone does, if you got that money to hire a 0.5 employee, what would that allow you to do? And how would that help you build capacity and help you do so much more?
Okay, дякую. And the next question.
Cortez Petrov from Saskatchewan. It's more of a comment. I want to, first of all, congratulate Orysia on her professionalism dealing with the Premier and the comments there. My also second to that is there any support that any other executive member of the legislature can give to UCC, APC for the support to the Ukrainian community in Alberta? Or is it sort of all just cracking by the whip? You know, like the leader says something and nobody else listens but to the leader. And I congratulate you for your professionalism in that. And then just if you see that sort of vision happening through that, because it's all over the news, even in CNN.
Okay, дякую.
David Prokopchuk, UNO UNF Saskatoon. I see you've had great success in partnering with other communities, other community organizations, and getting assistance. And I'm, with my gray hair, a little older era. I remember a time when we partnered in our drive for multiculturalism. We partnered, but from the other end, we had a large community, we had large support, and we were the resource that other communities looked to, and we were the leadership. And I believe that has paid tremendous dividends over the years. I think some of the successes you have had are due to some of that early leadership we provided in extending ourselves. And I have a reason for raising that. I've recently been approached in the Saskatoon to help the Afghan refugees who do not have a diaspora the size of ours, do not have the resources and the connections our community has. And I've been asked, as someone who's led in the Ukrainian community in Saskatoon, can you provide some link and some help for these people? Have you had any experience in the reverse, us providing leadership, us providing help and assistance? I know that some of our parishes, and I want to thank anyone here from Saskatchewan, because I know that some of our parishes have apparently extended help to the Afghan community. I want to thank you. We seldom thank people. I want to thank you for the work you've done, but I'd like to hear what experience you've had along those lines and what advice you can give. Thank you.
Okay, дякую.
Hi there, I'm Michael Boychuk. I'm Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council, and I've been based in Ukraine since before the start of the war, talking to global media. A couple of quick points, if I can, and then a question. By the way, I'm also a former SUSK national president. Great to see the organization roaring back to life here. It's fantastic work all of you are doing. In fact, Stefko Bandera just came up to me and said, we shouldn't be worried about the future with all of you up there at the table. So quickly, I just want to make a couple points about the situation in Ukraine. Right now, as you may know, they're now talking about daily blackouts in the Ukrainian capital and other cities of up to 6 hours a day. Winter clothing, generators are going to be really, really crucial to get to Ukraine. Secondly, I went to the humanitarian shtab in Odessa the other day, and you can feel the needs are getting greater there, and again, especially for winter clothing. Another thing is we should also really remember the internally displaced people in Ukraine, millions of them, especially in Western Ukraine. If you want to check it out, moveukraine.org. They're working in Ivano-Frankivsk and other centers. They're repurposing existing buildings to house these internally displaced people. And a lot are actually coming back. And this is leading me to my question. Those of the Ukrainians I've met who have come back said, we just can't afford to live in Berlin or Warsaw or Vancouver, Victoria, Toronto. I mean, for a lot of us Canadians, it's very difficult now, this cost of living crisis. So after the 6 months or whatever of benefits run out, is it sustainable for these asylum seekers here in Canada to be able to live $1,000, $2,000 a month for rent? I'm wondering if any of you had any thoughts on that. Thank you.
Okay.
Питання відомі. Як нам підписали закінчення іноземців, аби вони були ще більше мотивовані допомогти та підтримувати наші проекти. Я не українка, я канадка, я там жила 7 років і вивчала її мови. І на мою думку, нам треба говорити про громаду в ширшому контексті. Зараз є новий інтерес до України з боку іноземців, ці канадців, і як ми можемо мотивувати її допомогти нас.
Чи ви хотіли знати, я не думаю, що я збагнув те питання. Чи ви можете повторити? Ви хочете знати, як?
На англійську можна? The question is, how do we broaden our conversation about community? I'm not Ukrainian, I'm Canadian. I moved to Ukraine and worked there for 7 years, learned the language, fell in love with the culture, and people came back and continued my support. And I think now is a unique moment where Canadians generally and also internationally, people are very interested in supporting Ukraine. So how do we leverage that? I'm chair of Help Us Help. It's a national charity, and we're the same thing. We're constantly pulling from the Ukrainian Canadian community. But the question is, you know, I'm able to do that through my networks, but how do we bring in the broader community to get them on side for our projects?
Окей. So, тут було багато. Я не знаю, Orysia, чи ти хочеш говорити про legislature, може?
The legislature. Just to respond to that, if I got this right, Ocha, we are trying to get an opportunity to meet with the Premier. We want to do a focus on, like a media focus, request for some funds to help us inform, educate people with the facts. She has apologized with her remarks. Obviously, somebody has been feeding her some information. The information was, she was misinformed. You know, was this, where did this information come from? Is this, you know, the Russian propaganda machine working its way through even to our premier? So our focus right now is to have some access with her and see if she will actually help support right now financially this piece of, you know, this big gap. This is a big gap for us. So we have other asks for her as well. We want the welcome booth back at the airport. By the way, Winnipeg, amazing welcome booth. That's something that's very, very proud. You should be proud of. It's amazing. And in Edmonton, we did have one, and unfortunately, we had to take it down because we didn't have enough volunteers to run it through. So it hasn't been alive since July, but UCC-APC has put in proposal with the government to help us financially with that piece as well.
Okay, дякую. Danya, you want to help us understand how you're bringing in the broader community?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I can answer from the last question we just got. I think a big thing to remember, and which is constantly on my mind and a lot of people's minds, is that this isn't just impacting Ukrainians. This is the largest war that has happened in Europe since the Second World War, and there are other communities that are impacted by this as well. And if you know members from other communities, it's great to have a conversation about that and see how are they being impacted and how can that influence on them help them support us right now. One community that has been very strong in supporting Ukrainians is the Lithuanian community. And I happened to meet some Lithuanians at some rallies in Toronto, and that really grew into them inviting me to webinars and to speak about Ukraine, and then that further grew into the Lithuanian American Youth Association inviting me 2 weeks ago to attend their AGM in St. Petersburg, Florida, to speak about being Ukrainian. And this was a Lithuanian conference, but they wanted that Ukrainian angle. And so a big thing is to just keep in mind that this is impacting others, and they want to be welcomed into that conversation and have us share how we're feeling and how are we dealing with it, and work together in that sense.
And I'll just dovetail on that comment, because there was a question, can we help other communities, Afghan communities, for example, Syrians? And I know in Quebec, some people started complaining, how come Ukrainians seem to be getting preferential treatment? And that's not really the case. What the Ukrainian situation is doing, because of you and your ability to mobilize and work together, what we're actually doing is, for the most part, and it could be about housing, affordability just to live in Canada, daycare issues, mental health issues, school, tuition fees, all of these issues that you're bringing to the front and we're finding solutions for, they're not going to just impact Ukrainians. What Ukrainians are doing is being to the table or to the forefront the fact that there are certain things that newly arrived people may need. And when it's turned that way and looked through that lens, in fact, the Ukrainian community needs to be applauded. So you can't help everybody, but when you're faced with those kinds of comments, why are Ukrainians getting preferential treatment? That's not the case. Ukrainians are working their butts off to make this situation better, and that's what we're bringing to the attention of the governments. And these policies that can be put into, whether it's the policies of tuition that Danya was talking about earlier, they will apply to everybody. So you actually need to be applauded. And speaking of applauding, I do want to thank our panelists, because I think they're putting in a lot of work, as you all are. We had the opportunity today to listen. Thank you very much, and we'll continue with the program.